My name is Trevor Lecka. I'm Dubsado's Customer Education Specialist. Today, we're going to be doing a webinar talking about mini sessions. It's going to be primarily hosted by our certified specialist named Colie James. She's a fantastic specialist. She knows a ton about Dubsado. She is a photographer, a system specialist, and an educator. I could not think of a better person to talk about mini sessions today, and I'm really excited for you all to learn a little bit more about how to set these up in Dubsado. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Colie James. There we go.
Thank you for joining. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Depending on what time in the world it is for you, I appreciate you being here. Like Trevor said, today we are going to be talking about how to book out your mini sessions using Dubsado. And specifically, we are going to be talking about the scheduler and your workflows today. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and remove myself. There we go.
All right. If you see the screen that has my slides, just give me a shout out. You should see a picture of me and my daughter holding a camera, and then you should also see a picture of one of my clients on the right-hand side. Yes. All right. Thanks, guys. I like that confirmation before we get started. So as he said, I'm Colie James. I saw that Amber is here in Denver. I am just north of Denver and east of Boulder. I have been here in Colorado since 2008. It is such a long time, but I love living here. And as Trevor said, I am actually a family photographer and filmmaker. And early in my career, I discovered the power of CRMs and specifically Dubsado. And then during the pandemic, it was not a pandemic move, but during the pandemic, I shifted over to helping creative entrepreneurs and photographers like yourself set up systems in your business so that you can save time. And specifically for mini sessions, of course, you need the best systems that you have in order to get everything done as efficiently as possible. So what we are going to cover inside of this webinar today is first, we are going to take a deep dive into Dubsado Scheduler and specifically how to use it for mini sessions. Then we're going to talk about workflows on the back end after your client has booked through when you deliver their images. And then in the third step, I'm going to talk to you about putting it all together. So I just want to mention something about questions. Trevor is going to be monitoring the chat, but I am one of those people that teaches the webinar from beginning to end. And then I hop on and I answer any of the questions that you've asked. Because 9 times out of 10, when someone asks me a question, it is on a slide and it's usually like 2 or 3 slides later. So I go through the whole thing and then I will address your questions at the end. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the scheduler. Of course, Dubsado has an amazing scheduler that helps you schedule your clients inside of the CRM without having to use an external scheduler like Calendly or Acuity or TidyCal or anything like that. But using it for mini sessions is a little different than, let's say, if you're using the scheduler to schedule consultation calls. So inside of your scheduler, you have the following settings. You can set a name, set your availability, set the window in which people can book your mini session or your consultation call, whatever it is that you're doing. You have specific settings related to the appointment, which we're going to be referring to as the mini session. We have some communication settings so that we can send confirmation and reminder emails. Those are my favorite. We can invoice directly on our scheduler, which is what makes it absolutely perfect for your mini sessions. And then finally, we've got the notification section. So I do want to say, the goal of using your scheduler for mini sessions is making choosing the time as easy as possible. Now, before you jump into setting up your schedule for mini sessions, you do need to have your calendar connected to your scheduler inside Dubsado. This is to make sure that you don't accidentally double book yourself with something else that's on your calendar. But I am going forward assuming that you all have this done related to your Dubsado account. And so inside the scheduler, the settings that we are going to talk about specifically today are setting your availability, requiring payment, and then what kind of communication we're going to send clients after they have booked their mini session. So I have screenshots throughout these slides. And at the end, I'm going to tell you how you can get a copy of these slides in case you want to go back and refer to them later. But this is what the two main screens for the scheduler look like. On the left, you can see some of those things that I mentioned, giving it a name, telling it how long the session's going to last, when they can schedule the appointment, what your availability is, and then whether or not you will be marked on your calendar as busy or available when someone books that time slot. Just want to put a little note. Everyone needs to make sure that when you are booking mini sessions, that it is marking you as busy. If you accidentally click available, that's when you get double booked, and that just opens a whole world of trouble. Now, on the advanced tab is the second screenshot that you will see on the right. This is when you can set things like how close to the day someone can book a session, whether or not you need a buffer time, like a set amount of time before and after that session. If it was an individual thing, maybe you need to have drive time, but we're going to talk about buffers specifically related to mini sessions in a few slides. The increment of how long that mini session will last. Are your mini sessions 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes? I don't actually know of anybody who does a mini session that's 30 minutes except for me, but it is possible. And then whether or not you need to cap the number of sessions that you are willing to do in a day or off of this scheduler, period. That's weird. There we go. Sorry, it like went through a whole bunch of slides and it wasn't showing me. There we go. Okay, so key decisions for your availability. First, how long will the session be? Second, how long do you need between sessions? Third, do you need to cap the sessions? And fourth, will you sell last minute sessions? Now, if you are someone that makes your mini sessions available and they always sell out within 1 or 2 days, you are not going to need to worry about that last question. But if you are someone who sells mini sessions and they don't sell out and you leave the link live, you want to make sure that the day of the session, someone doesn't book a session for like 2 hours later and you miss the notification, and therefore you might not be where you're supposed to be for the mini session. So I am going to give you some examples. I love examples. The first one that we're going to talk about is a 10-minute mini session. So in this example, we are going to assume that you are booking 10-minute mini sessions with a 5-minute gap after each one on September 13th and 14th, and that you are going to offer these mini sessions from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. straight through. Now, after I made this, I was like, does anybody actually do 4 hours of mini sessions? So just go with me. I'm also going to tell you how you can add yourself like a lunch break or a break in between if you feel like you need it. And we're assuming that you want to sell out every single slot. So we are not going to put that we have a maximum of 10 slots that we want to sell, or 9 or 8 or anything that's less than the maximum, because this is 4 hours worth of availability. And if we are booking sessions every 15 minutes, that means that you can have 4 every hour. So the maximum number of sessions that you could do is 16, but do you really want to sell all 16? I'm assuming for this that you do. So this is what the scheduler will look like for this particular example. So I have added the appointment name 10-minute mini session. Now, I did this because I didn't really give you any additional details. If you know the park that you are going to be doing it at, if you want to include the 2 days that are available, I highly recommend that you put as much detail into the appointment name as possible, because this is client forward facing. They will see the name of the appointment on the scheduler, whether you give them a public link to click and basically open it in a Dubsado window, or if you are going to embed it on your website, which I am going to show you an example of that. I have put the duration is going to be 10 minutes. I have put that it's a fixed date range. These are only going to be available on September 13th and September 14th. And as you can see on the actual scheduler, I have taken away all availability except for those 2 particular days. And at the bottom, as I mentioned, I have marked myself busy so that every time someone books one of these mini sessions, it is taken off of the scheduler and it is no longer available for someone else to book that exact same session time. So inside of the advanced tab, I am putting that I am not going to let anyone book one of these mini sessions with less than 48 hours notice. This means that if I still have slots that are available on the 13th and the 14th, and someone looks at my scheduler on September 12th, they are not going to see any availability for the 13th because I'm requiring a minimum of 2 days before they can book. Now, buffer times, even though we talked about a buffer time, I have put that each of these is 0, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. The third is increments of time. I am indicating that I want these clients to be able to book a mini session on a quarter of an hour. So 3 o'clock, 3:15, 4, 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock. You got it. And then I have not maxed out the number of appointments. Now, if I had 16 slots available and I only wanted to book 12, I could add in that it has a limit of 12. Now, I can't particularly do 6 on one day and 6 on another day using this. Well, I guess I could, but I can't max out the number of times that it can be used on a particular day. If that's what I intend to do. So for the allow this schedule to be used this many times, like I would have to decide per day and not a total. So on the next screen, I have my explanation for the buffer. And that is because I said that the sessions would be available every 15 minutes. So there is a natural 5-minute buffer in between each one of these sessions. This means that I didn't need to add in a 5-minute buffer here because I'm only allowing them to book at 15-minute increments. The reason that I choose to do this instead of say they can book every 10 minutes and it has to have a 5-minute buffer, if you do that, the way that it shows the times will be absolute madhouse. And if someone chooses one time, you might not be able to block off and have those set amounts of time. So I like for there to be like an invisible buffer, if you will, that still gives me 10-minute sessions with a 5-minute buffer after, but they're not actually seeing all of the availability that there would be. That is just my preference. I also want to note that because you have made this a 10-minute session, even though they're going to get a confirmation email if you enable this that says their session it starts at 8, it is not going to show them 8 to 8:15. It's going to tell them that it's a 10-minute session. And I like to do this because no matter how many times you remind many session clients, some of them run late. So this is not a webinar where I'm going to be telling you about all of the policies that you should have in place, but you should be reminding many session clients multiple times, as many times as possible, that if they show up late, it does not extend their time. Like they get that 10 minutes, and if they don't show up or they come 5 minutes late, they only get the remaining 5 minutes inside of their session. All right, so I'm just showing you what the scheduler would look like on September 13th. This is showing you the first 5 sessions, and if I kept scrolling down, it would show you all of the available times all the way until 7 o'clock end. So the last session that would be available to be booked would be 6:45 p.m. All right, so we have talked about setting your availability. The next thing that we're going to talk about is requiring payment, because this is probably the most important thing. One thing that people find very annoying is if you didn't have that there was a required payment, people could hop onto your calendar, snag a slot, and then not pay you. And that availability would still be taken off of your calendar. So by requiring payment, you are not allowing someone to take a slot from your active calendar until they have paid that invoice. And for the purpose of this, the invoice is going to be the amount of money that you have indicated on the scheduler that's due. You can add add-ons, which I'm going to get to in a few slides, but what is absolutely required in order to take that time slot off is just what you have listed on the scheduler. So the goal here is to get paid when they select their slot. You don't want anybody sitting in limbo. You don't want somebody to grab one of your slots and not pay you. And then, 12 slots have been taken, but you've only received payment for 4 of them. So this is what it looks like on the Advanced tab, all the way at the bottom, for you to add in a package that is going to be required in order for the client to book the session and take it off of your available calendar. So I have given it a name, which is mini session. Again, I encourage you to be more specific. List the location if you're only doing these in one location. List the 2 days that they were available. If it's a fall mini session in 2024, go ahead and say that. Be as descriptive as you can because this will show up on the invoice that they pay. And then you give them a description. Again, this is not a policies webinar, but I do encourage you to tell them exactly what is included in this mini session. I have specifically said it is 10 minutes of session time, 3 high resolution images, and that they can purchase additional images and products after the session is done. So I am selling these at $250 a piece. I did not add tax. If you are somewhere that requires tax, you can just add your tax category here. And then I have the category service here so that, anytime someone's booking these mini sessions, it's basically telling me how much I've made off of mini sessions if you wanted to look in your income reports. And then if you have discounts, you can change this little section down here to yes, and you can choose from your active discounts. I do want to say you cannot create the discounts here. So you have to go to packages and then the discounts tab and create the discount before you do this so that it's available inside the dropdown for you to enable. All right. Again, I want to make sure that this is very clear. The time, if you have indicated that there is an invoice and it is required payment, that time slot is not reserved until payment is received. Now, if someone starts the process and let's say that they walk away from their computer because, they didn't have their credit card and that is still showing available on the calendar and someone else grabs it, it is going to tell them that when they come back and they try to finish. So again, you don't need to really worry about getting double booked in this case. I do want to warn you that depending on how you set this up, the moment that someone grabs a day and time and then they fill out the form will actually create the project. Now, the time slot is not reserved, but the project itself is created. And so I do want to mention near the end what you need to do with those like incomplete projects if you get people that start the process and then they don't finish. They haven't taken the time slot off of your calendar, but it does create a project inside of Dubsado. The second thing that I want to mention is that you can offer additional upgrades with a proposal. So let's say that your mini session is $250, but you are offering to allow them to upgrade to the full gallery at purchase for a discounted amount. We can add that to a proposal and they can do this, but in order to grab the time slot, they only need to pay that initial $250. And then, of course, I already said you can allow discounts with a discount code. You need to create the discount first and then add it onto the scheduler invoice. So we have done availability, we have done required payment, and the last thing that we are going to talk about here related to scheduler settings is communication. Guys, I love reminder emails for anything that anyone books. I am one of those people right now that has the attention span of a squirrel. Something goes by and my head is like this, my head is like this. Sometimes I'm sitting in front of a computer because I know that I have a call and I get distracted in the 5 minutes that it takes me to sit at the computer. So I believe in as many reminder emails as you see fit. And I also want all of you to enable a confirmation email. If you do not add a customized confirmation email to the scheduler, Dubsado is still going to send one out. And it's very plain. It definitely does not match my brand. So I want to make sure that you guys are writing a confirmation email that includes the important information for your clients and also tells them, the day and time of what they just booked. So this is just an example of a confirmation email for my mini session. You're officially scheduled with Colie for your mini session. That's the subject. You can't see it, but that's a GIF. If you guys are not adding GIFs to your email, that is a whole different thing. Ask me in the Q&A and I'm happy to share. But pictures and GIFs can be very easily added to Dubsado emails and they are amazing and your clients will love them. So I've got the details here and I'm telling them the next step. I'm a big person. Any email that you send someone needs to have the next step. So I'm telling them that they are going to receive a style and prep guide in the next few days to help them plan for the session. But if they have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out before then. All right, so now we're going to talk about reminders. Now, I've only got one reminder on here. Depends on what kind of session it is. And it also depends on how far out you're booking them. If you are announcing mini sessions and you're booking them like in the next 2 weeks, you probably don't need a lot of reminders. But it is now July. And if you are planning to use this webinar in order to set up your mini sessions for, say, October, guys, that's a lot of space. You're probably going to want to send some reminder emails. Now, you can send them from the scheduler. And if you want to include the appointment details, you have to send them from the scheduler. But we're going to talk about workflows, and you can always add in some additional nurture emails for that longer length of time inside the workflow. But this one is just saying, hey, this is your session time, this is the location, and I've given a little bit more details on how to get to the specific location. And if you are someone who has a helper for your mini sessions and your clients should be calling or texting them for help, make sure that you include that information in every single reminder email that you send. All right. So now we are going to talk about the additional options that you have on the scheduler. The first is connecting an additional form, which if you do not connect a form and that form is not set up to create a project, it is only going to add this client to your calendar. It's not going to actually create a project. So we're going to talk about that because that's very important. The second thing is that you have the capability of adding a redirect URL from the scheduler so that the moment that they book their mini session, you are not just showing them a blank white screen that says, thank you for booking your session, and it has the default Dubsado where they can click and add it to their calendar. You can actually create a customized page on your website or somewhere else where you are giving them additional prep information or just making it more personalized than showing them that blank screen. And I highly recommend for not just for schedulers, but also for your contact form. If you have not discovered how awesome redirect URLs are, you are certainly missing out. The third thing that we're going to talk about is the different views, because in Dubsado, you can have a weekly versus a monthly view for every single one of your calendars. So which form should you use? So I'm going to say that there's technically 3 kinds of forms that you can add on here, but one of them is not important for the purpose of this webinar, which is solely based on mini sessions. When you are selling mini sessions in a public manner, which means someone is going to click on a link, they are going to book that mini session, and they don't need to already have an active project inside of Dubsado. You need to connect a form that will create that project. And we have 2 forms in Dubsado that will do this for us. The first is a lead capture form, contact form, whichever one you want to refer to it as. And the second one is a proposal, but there is a specific setting that you must click on a proposal in order to make it public to where it will create a project after it is completed. So I want you to use the lead capture if you are allowing them to book a mini session and you are not trying to upsell them or upgrade them at the time of purchase. So in the example that we talked about before, if you are going to charge them $250 and it's a required payment on the scheduler, you do not need to do anything else. You can just attach a lead capture form and ask them the information that you need to know at booking. Now, this is important to me, guys. Sometimes people like to include like their whole client questionnaire here. And I want to highly encourage none of you to do that. Remember, the process here is they pick a day and time, they fill out the form, and then they pay you money. Guys, I cannot emphasize enough that this form needs to only ask what you need to know, because you don't want them to have to find 10 minutes, 15 minutes to fill out a longer form. You just need their name, phone number, email, maybe their address, anything else like who's in their family, if they have any special needs. All of those things can be taken care of on a client questionnaire after they book. So make it short and sweet so that people can get from choosing a day and time to paying your invoice as quickly as humanly possible. Now, the second option that you have for a form is a proposal form. And this is where if you have any additional add-ons, like maybe you're going to upsell them for the whole gallery, as I said before, maybe you want them to be able to have, I don't know, hair and makeup done, like anything that you want to offer as an upgrade, you can do it on a proposal form. And then it will be on the invoice. But once again, I want to remind you, they do not have to pay that invoice in full in order to snag that slot. They only need to pay the portion that is required on the scheduler. All right, why I love redirect URLs. So again, it makes it more personal. If you are someone that can stand being on video, I highly recommend that you make like a 60-second video that tells them how excited you are for their fall mini session. Maybe you have like done a phone video of the location and you want to get them excited about it. Whatever you include in that is fine. If you are not a video person and you can't push yourself to get there, maybe you could just do a GIF of you waving, or maybe you could just do a picture. But I just highly recommend, we are very visual in what we are selling. And so everywhere that you possibly can, I want you to have pictures, either of yourself, the location, or of previous clients to remind them what they're getting from you when they make that purchase. Now, monthly versus weekly. I am just someone who cannot stand the weekly view and having to scroll multiple times. Now, in the specific example that we did, we were only doing September 13th and 14th. And Dubsado is really awesome in that if you have that limited window, when they open the scheduler, if you have weekly view, it's going to automatically pop you to the first available date, which was September 13th. So they don't actually need to scroll in order to do it. But visually, I just prefer the monthly view. I think that it looks nicer. I think that people have an easier time finding that date that they want instead of looking at it vertically. So that's just my opinion, especially if your mini sessions are booking out in advance. All right, workflows. People dislike setting up the scheduler, but they dislike setting up these workflows even more. You are actually not required to set up a workflow for your mini sessions. I just highly recommend it. And I'm going to tell you now what I think you should include in that workflow. So first of all, a payment plan. Now, the payment plan is only required if you are doing an upgrade. Because remember, if you are requiring payment on a scheduler, they're going to have to pay that in order to progress anyways. Request a signed contract. This is one of the only drawbacks that I personally have with the Dubsado scheduler. And that is you cannot attach a contract to a scheduler. Even if you attach a proposal that has a contract attached to it, when you attach the proposal to the scheduler, the contract will be removed. So if you need a contract for your mini sessions, you need to send it to them immediately after they've booked. And the only way that you can do that automatically is through a workflow. The third thing that I want to mention is the limitations for appointment smart fields. And then the fourth thing is collecting feedback. All right, so payment plan. I've already said, if you are requiring upgrades, and that means that you have attached a proposal to the scheduler, I want you to add a payment plan of 100% due at booking. This makes sure that when they see the invoice, it shows them that the total amount is due, and hopefully your client goes to the bottom and clicks the button and pays the whole thing. That's what we want. For requesting a signed contract, as I said, you can't attach a contract to a scheduler, but I also want to say that the most important thing that you do with this contract is that when you have your trigger needs to be after invoice paid in full. And the reason that that needs to happen is because this workflow is going to get triggered off of the form that you've attached to the scheduler. Now, that form is completed before they pay you. So if you don't have a trigger on here that says after invoice paid in full, you may get clients that get the contract before they've actually paid you the money. So I just want to make sure that this is very clear. Your triggers need to be after invoice paid in full so that you are making sure that you aren't progressing with someone who only chose a day and time, filled out the form, but didn't actually pay you money. Because again, a reminder, if they don't pay you money, the time slot doesn't come off the calendar, but this workflow might progress as if they did if you do not halt it until the invoice is paid in full. Now, limitations for appointment smart fields. I will say this is one of the number one questions that I get asked people are like, okay, Colie, I tried to use the smart fields for appointments and they were blank. Appointment smart fields in a Dubsado workflow only work if the scheduler was sent in that specific workflow. And with mini sessions, we're not sending the scheduler through a workflow. We're putting it somewhere public, like our website, or we're linking it on Instagram, or we're sending it in an email. We're not actually bringing them into Dubsado and then starting a workflow and then sending them a mini session scheduler. They are getting it somewhere public. So you can't use the appointment fields in a workflow. So anything that you want to send that needs to have that appointment data in it, you're going to have to send it as a reminder email from the scheduler. All right, collecting feedback. This is not really related to mini sessions, guys, but I have a very strong opinion. Yeah, opinion. That's a good way of putting it. I have a very strong opinion that all of us should be asking our clients for feedback, testimonials, Google reviews, however it is that you want to say. And because we are starting a workflow, I want to make sure that you are actually asking them for this feedback after the session is done. Now, in particular, we know that these mini sessions are occurring on September 13th and September 14th for everyone. So what I like to do is actually set this feedback to go out maybe a few days after you're scheduled to deliver their galleries. Or if you want immediate feedback on how the session was before they get the images, you could do it a few days after the actual session. But in this case, because we have a fixed date, we could specifically schedule this in the workflow to go out on, like, let's say, September 16th. Or if you wanted to wait and your delivery window is 2 weeks, you could send it at 2 weeks plus 2 or 3 days, a specific date inside of the workflow. This not only gives you great feedback on your services, ways to improve, because we can probably all improve, but voice of customer is super important for marketing. So if clients say something amazing about your mini sessions this time, you're going to want to use those words when you market your next mini sessions, whether that's in the spring or it's next fall. All right, so now I want to talk about how to put it all together for your audience. So I am a big believer in showing your work at the same time that you are asking a client for money. As photographers, I think it's super important, and Dubsado's forms are amazing for that, unless you're using a scheduler. So I love proposals. Proposals are like my favorite thing in Dubsado. But the way that a scheduler works, you choose a day and time, and then they see the form, and then they pay the invoice. I would rather have people look at your amazing work at the same time that they're looking at your availability. And so for that reason, I highly recommend that everyone sets up their scheduler embedded on their website. And so if you're going to send an email blast about your mini sessions, I want that link to be a link to a page on your website and not a link to the direct scheduler. Same rule applies for like Instagram. So I have an example. And what I am going to do now, I always fail at this, guys, but I'm going to try to switch what I'm showing you. Awesome. All right, this is one of my clients, and I will admit this is not for her mini sessions. This is for her fall family sessions, but I love this webpage so much, I decided to show it to you. So she has her art at the top, and as you scroll, it's telling them how it works. And then it's giving them the investment details and the collections that they can purchase after, which, hey, for mini sessions, guys, you can still do something like this. You can have a session fee and then upsell them when the mini session is done. But this is the part that I really wanted to show you. Down here, she's got her availability on a calendar. Then it's going to show a form, and then it's going to show an invoice. And in her case, she is not upselling. And so this form is a lead capture. But you choose a day and time, and then you fill out the form. And then the next thing that it's going to do is, I don't want to fill it out. It's going to take too long. It would show you the invoice that would show her session fee is due. But I just highly recommend that if you are capable, that you embed it on your website so that they are in awe of your beautiful work and they are more likely to actually book the mini session. All right, so I'm going to come back and attempt to switch my screen again. I'm not failing, which is awesome. All right, and we're back here. All right. Again, if you're going to send it in an email, that's fine. But if you create a web page like I just showed you, Megs, I want you to use that link. Guys, getting traffic to your website at any point in time is awesome. Helps Google know that you're, amazing. And so in this case, this is also why I suggest that you embed the scheduler on your website. All right. So now we have gotten to the questions portion. I am going to, let's see.
Fantastic. All right.
Stop sharing.
Perfect.
Yay.
Colie, you nailed it. Thank you very much for all that. That was fantastic. We do have a good number of questions here in the Q&A to go through, so I'll just read them out. We'll chat about them. Sounds good?
Yes.
Cool. So Stanley was asking, if I want to have multiple mini session dates with different locations, would it be better to have it set up with multiple schedulers or just the one? I think I know the answer, but go ahead, Colie.
Okay. Guys, I literally thought about that this morning, and then I was like, no, I'm just too lazy to change my slides. And if someone asks, I will ask. I will also say, because you asked this question, I will go and take screenshots and add it to these slides so that if you download them, you will get to see it. I would suggest a scheduler group. And so the amazing part of a scheduler group is I would do one scheduler per location, but then you create a scheduler group so that when someone clicks on the group, they can actually see, oh, we could go to Liberty Park on September 12th. We could go to the National Monument on September 13th. And then when they click, they'll see the specific availability. That gives you a lot of flexibility, because it could be that one of your locations, you only want to do morning sessions. It could be that a different location, you only want to do evening. And so by having one scheduler per location, you can get that kind of nitty gritty details. But then if you combine them all in a scheduler group, that means that when they click on one link, or if it's embedded on your website, they will see the options. And then when they click on the one that they want, only that scheduler will open and appear for them. Trevor, were you going to say something different?
Yep, pretty much along those same lines. I know for a fact that having multiple schedulers is going to be the way to go, especially with different locations. The scheduler group, in my opinion, would just be somewhat optional. Like if you wanted to have one link, especially for the flow that you were just describing, that works fantastically. Having separate links is going to be a bit harder. The scheduler group allows you to kind of combine those things into one. So I think that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, let's go on to the next question here from Amy. Can you set it up so they pay a deposit to book, and then closer to the date, they need to pay the remainder? For example, a month out of bookings, they need to pay $50. Then 5 days out, they're paying that remaining $200.
Okay. It depends on what your amount is. So remember, if you are going to require payment, it is one amount, and whatever that amount is, they have to pay it then. So in the case of your very specific question, I only recommend this for people who want to do the deposits. On your website, or even, I guess, in like the details of the invoice, I would specifically say $200. And then in the description or on your website, I would say this $200 is a non-refundable deposit. Your balance of $600 is due, whenever it is relative to the thing. And then you would want to set your payment plan up in that manner. So you would need a payment plan, but you would also need to do a proposal so that it would charge them the extra amount of money. I really encourage people to not do it this way, because the more layers of complexity you add, the harder it is. But if you're charging a really big amount of money and you want to make sure that it's done in this way, the deposit is what you need to require to be paid. That is the only thing that you would put on the scheduler invoice itself. And whatever else you wanted to bill them, it could be in a proposal. Or I actually have a different client where we send them a separate invoice inside the workflow a couple days before the mini session or the regular session. So either way works, but I just want to make sure that I'm really clear. Again, the invoice on the scheduler can only require what's specifically due in order to save that session for them. And then there's also thinking about the contract. So remember, on your contract, it's going to automatically populate what was on the invoice. So if you're populating just that deposit and you're not using a proposal that's attached to get the extra $600 or however much it is for you, that's not going to appear in their contract if you're using a smart field. Now, you could create a specific contract for these mini sessions, and you could have a section that says additional, remainder, payment plan, payment schedule, whatever it is that you want to call it. But just be very clear. everywhere that you possibly can, that $200 is not all that they owe you.
Yep. Took the words out of my mouth. I think that's the biggest piece. A question that we get frequently here on the Dubsado end of things is that confusion, right? If you have what you would determine to be a deposit, that whatever your deposit is what's going on the required invoice for the scheduler. That's the key. And then beyond that, like Colie mentioned, there's going to be multiple ways to set that up where it's either a proposal or an additional invoice later on in the workflow. Either way would be fine. Cool. The next question was from Hannah, but I think we answered that with that.
Technically, Hannah's question was exactly what we just said. And again, like, I mean, because honestly, I didn't mention this, but you could actually send a proposal through a workflow later in the process to capture that additional. So if you wanted to make the first one like a session fee, and then you wanted to tell them, hey, you have to buy one of these collections or you have to do this additional whatever, you could always send it in a proposal through the workflow as well. But mini sessions need to be as simple as possible. You have to explain your policies multiple times so that you don't get jammed up when it's unnecessary. But, everybody likes to run their business like they want to. So whether or not it's one invoice at the beginning and you're adding it on from the proposal, in that case, it can be one invoice. Like it would show the scheduler part and it would show whatever was added on that proposal. It's just they could get away with only paying that deposit in order to reserve their time slot, versus sending an invoice in a workflow separately is totally possible. And that's when you would have two invoices.
Exactly right. Cool. Before we move on to Mike's question, I know some folks asked immediately after you mentioned the GIF in your emails. They wanted to see if you had any more information on that. I mean, do you have the ability to show them how to add that in there, or we can just describe it if you like?
Hold on.
Do you have any particular
I don't know whose account I'm in. Give me a sec, Trevor.
Okay,
I mean, with me, I'm in like 50 million people's accounts, so I got to make sure it's not a client. Okay. I am inside of one of my accounts. Let me share my screen again.
Fantastic.
That one, and it would be Dubsado. There we go. Okay, everybody should see a Dubsado screen now. This is one of my fake accounts that I use to show people stuff. So if I wanted to write an email, or actually, let's just choose one. It already has a GIF. Okay, I'm going to delete that GIF. So I love Giphy.com. What I do is when I find the GIF that I love, I right click and I save it. And it used to be that it saved as a GIF. Now it saves as a .webp, but then you can find a free converter online to just add that up there and download a GIF. But guys, please ignore all of here's all my GIFs. I mean, guys, I have so many GIFs. I just literally, and Dubsado makes it so easy. All you have to do when you get to the one that you want to do is you just drag it over into the email. And if you see where that cursor is, that's where it's going to go. And then all you need to do, it always doesn't add a space between the text, and that drives me insane. So just make sure that you've added text, and that's how you add a GIF. And then all you need to do is hit save and close, and you have added a GIF to your email. Now, I am someone that you should have GIFs for all of your expressions. So if something makes you super happy, you should have a whole bunch of GIFs related to that. If you have a different thing that you would want to do to tell somebody thank you, you should have different GIFs for that. I mean, I probably have 50 or 60 GIFs inside of my GIF folders. And then I also make GIFs of myself. So guys, it's really easy. Put your phone somewhere, look directly at your phone, turn the video on, and just wave. Stop it. Find a free video to GIF converter. I like Easy GIF. It's EZ and then GIF. You just upload the video and tell it that you want a GIF. And when it spits it out, you just right click it to download. If you have Vimeo, because I know some of you photographers might, Vimeo will also allow you to create GIFs from the videos that you upload. This is just the easiest way to add a bit of personality in any emails, whether it's mini sessions or your signature service.
Totally. Yeah. The other thing too, I know a lot of photographers have Canva, right? So you can do the exact thing you're mentioning
with Canva too.
You take yourself a video, throw it into Canva, go to actually download your presentation or just select the elements. And this is nice too, because you can give yourself a background, right? You could have the video.
And you could put words on it. Yes.
Words on it, that kind of stuff. then you can select the file type as GIF when you go ahead and download it. So that works really well for GIFs.
Trevor, I totally forget about that. I wasn't a Canva person for a very long time. So of course I make it more difficult than it has to be.
No, I think that there's no wrong way to go about doing it. However, people are comfortable doing it is totally fine. But the one thing I want to add on to that, when you were selecting that GIF, we actually couldn't see the files and all that. But
oh,
it's just the way the screen share is coming through. It's not.
Guys, you guys just click on your GIF and drag it. That's all I did.
That's all I wanted to reiterate. You can drag and drop it in there. If you want to do it a bit differently, maybe you don't have, you've got full screen Dubsado, so you can't see your files for whatever reason. At the bottom of the email toolbar, there's the tiny little A icon that hides a lot of the formatting options. You can click the A. You can also say insert image. Yeah. When you click that, it'll ask you to select files. It'll pull up whatever files you're looking for as well. So if you're not comfortable dragging and dropping, that button in the email composer is also available.
That is why I love having Trevor here, because he thinks of the really technical way instead of me just telling you just click and drag.
I think I probably am the one that makes it harder. You're the one that's doing this all the time. So I think your answer is going to be the best one. But anyways, we got our bases covered. That's the important thing. So let's talk about Mike's situation. I read his question earlier and I wasn't quite sure what he was getting at, but let's just kind of talk it out a little bit. So he was asking about a mini session that's 2 hours. So that's a bit longer. I'm not sure I would necessarily qualify that as a mini session, but his situation is that the first hour of that booking is hair and makeup. And then it sounds like the next hour would just be the photo shoot, right? He wants to schedule them out. So it's 10 to noon, 11 to 1, and so on and so forth. Do you think Mike could use some of the stuff we've talked about today as far as mini sessions are concerned to do what he's doing? Or do you think he'd be in a situation that's more of just a standard photography booking?
Man.
I know that's a really specific question.
It is a really specific question. And in my mind, Mike, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm fairly certain that you cannot do what you want to do, but I'm going to think about it and I'm going to let you know in an Instagram on DM. I'm pretty sure you can't do what, because if you made it available, people could book the same slot more than one time. If you made it individuals, I mean, the only thing that I could think of to get it automated is that what you would need to do is only put the time slots for the actual session on the scheduler. And then in your email communication, you would tell them you've booked a slot starting at 9, but you actually need to show up at hair and makeup for 8. Yep. Like you would have to tell them that, but it's not the same thing as having them book that 2-hour slot, which I know doesn't help you be as automated as possible. I'm going to think about it, but I'm pretty sure my answer is it's not possible.
Colie, your idea was pretty much my only thought about that as well, which is that if the only time frame that really makes sense for like photography and you want to do 10 to noon and then 11 to 1, so on and so forth, right? Like you would have to list out the exact time and kind of ignore that hair and makeup area. So cool. Last one here from Rachel. Actually, not the last one. We got a couple more in here. We have, let's see, is it possible to let clients choose the length of their session?
It is not, unless you use a scheduler group. So another thing, I don't know if any of you guys double up if someone has more than 5 family members, or, you know, you do extended mini sessions and like extended family mini sessions. And so they would need to book like 2 slots. So what you would do in that case is you would need a scheduler for each length of time. And then you could group them together in a scheduler. And so if they need a 30-minute slot, they would choose the 30-minute slot, and then it would show the scheduler in 30-minute increments versus the other people that only needed 15. And in that case, it's really nice because it all plays nicely together. So if someone books a 30-minute slot, whatever time frame they chose, it blocks it off for like the single sessions too. That is the only way. Like we don't have something that it's like 30 minutes, whatever. But for me, I sell 2-hour in-home sessions and then 3-hour in-home sessions that have video. So if I was going to use a scheduler, that is what I would do. Photo sessions, video sessions. Photo sessions would show 2-hour blocks. Video sessions would show 3-hour blocks.
Totally. Perfect. Just for some folks that were asking in the chat as well, what is your Instagram handle so they can find you?
Colie James, ColieJames.
I'll type it out here for those folks in the chat. Oops, that's not it. I'm going to do a space. Cool. I think that was everything that was in our Q&A. I think there was a couple other questions that didn't make it into the Q&A. I'm just going to scan this real quick and make sure we're not leaving any quick questions out here in the cold. Hannah was asking that, she was mentioning this has been really helpful, but she wanted more of a visual setup to going through the scheduler and workflow. What we can do, I know that your slides obviously today were really helpful, and we can make those slides available to any attendees after the fact. We'll send out an email just for those folks that maybe haven't been in a webinar before. You will automatically get an email that has this recording in it. And in that email, I'll make sure to include the actual Canva presentation if you wanted to go.
Oh, okay. I have a slide where they can go and download it, but that's fine too.
Cool. That's, if they have that, even better. Perfect. Either way, we'll get you access to these slides, and hopefully that helps you out there, Hannah. All right. And then let's see here. I think that was about it. Yeah. Teresa, I want to make sure you were all good to go there. She was just saying this is an amazing flow. Actually means we can implement scheduler first, and then lead form works best. My lead form without available slots looks weird. Mm-hmm. So having that form on there is essential if you're going to be doing a public booking.
Yes. Fantastic. I mean, because you want a project in case you ever want to do anything else with them, like just automatically creating a project. The only time that I personally find it acceptable for you to not do that is if it's a consultation call and you are someone that speaks to way more people than actually book. Like if your booking rate is pretty high, you want everybody to get a project from the moment that they inquire. But like, let's say that you, I don't know, talk to 10 people and only 2 people book. Well, then maybe you could just add consultation calls to your calendar without creating a project. But anything related to sessions, getting paid, all of that needs a project, because otherwise it's hard to find stuff on the back end if you don't have a project to go to look at everything.
No, it's very true. It's very true. If you, let's say you had a scheduler with no lead capture form, but you did have a required invoice, that invoice is only going to show up in your actual like invoices list in Dubsado. It's not going to be associated with the project. And so if just from an organization standpoint, pretty much 90% of the time, like you said, I think the example of just saying, hey, you're not doing a ton of bookings on your consultation call might be a good example of a reason not to. Otherwise, for the most part, have that lead capture form or public proposal attached.
Well, some people just don't like digital clutter, and I'm not one of those people. I want a paper trail for everything. Sure. So everybody gets a project. If they don't end up booking, I will archive them. But I do work with like, not really photographers. This isn't really a photographer thing. This is more people who are like doing active sales calls and that kind of thing. And they talk to way more people. They don't want their Dubsado cluttered with like 20 projects that they end up having to archive because they don't book. But even then I'm like, no, don't you want to see the evidence that they contacted you? So I feel very strongly, but like all photographers, what you're doing needs to create a project. Because if it's not a good time now, chances are it'll be a good time next year. So you still want those people in your system somewhere that you can access to see when it is that they inquired about your services.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Fantastic. We're coming up on just under an hour here. I want to make sure we didn't have any other questions. It looks like we're all good here. So as long as everybody else is good on their questions, I think we will be safe to call it here, right? Colie, I want to thank you very, very much for being here today and taking the time to talk through mini sessions. Like I was saying, this is a topic that we get asked all the time about, and I think it's extremely valuable for photographers to kind of have this option in their toolkit to go ahead and implement in their actual photography business. So Colie, I'm so sorry. Colie, thank you very, very much for being here.
You're welcome. Yes, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys showing up on this random Wednesday.
Exactly. We love the Wednesday webinars. We get some education going midweek. Always a good time. All right, folks, we'll catch you on the next one. Keep an eye out for that email if you want to watch the recording again, and we'll talk to you again soon.